Today on the Locked On Predators podcast, part 2 of our draft preview for the Predators' 15th overall pick. Who will the Nashville Predators pick with that spot? Prospects expert Eric Dunay is joining us with two people who he thinks might be a perfect fit. Plus, how far could Matvei Michkov fall all the way to where the Predators pick? That's a question we asked today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day every single day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, available to you wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. I'm Nick Morgan. I am a writer at Penalty Box Radio. My partner in crime, Ann Kimmel from InsideThePreds.com, is going to be joining us in just 1 second, as well as prospects expert Eric Dunay from Penalty Box Radio. If you're a Preds fan, you have definitely seen some of his prospects work all over social media. And he's back with us today to talk about a couple more people the Nashville Predators could draft with that 15th overall pick. A couple of guys that I think Preds fans are going to be very, very excited about. We also talk about one of the biggest unknowns of the draft, and that's where Matvei Michkov is going to fall. This is a guy that's a top 3 talent that a lot of people think may go later in the draft just because of his contract situation in the KHL. Could he fall all the way to Nashville? Maybe, maybe not. But either way, it is something worth talking about. So without further ado, let's get to Eric Dunay from Penalty Box Radio. We're talking 2023 NHL Draft prospects with Eric Dunay from Penalty Box Radio. Eric, one of the big things Barry Trotz said in the offseason was the Nashville Predators need to find that number 1 center, the number 1 scoring dynamic center. There's a guy out there, Brayden Yager. This is a guy that just textbook looks like somebody who could be a really good number 1 or number 2 center in the NHL.
Yeah, it's been an interesting junior career for Yager. He's playing in Moose Jaw over in the WHL. So last year he spent a lot more time on the wing, scored 34 goals in his first full season in the WHL. This year he moved pretty much permanently to center. That dropped to 28 goals, but he doubled his assists to 50 and scored 78 points in 67 games. I'm a big fan of Yager's game. I think he has a lot to offer. For me, it's a little tough. Some nights I watch him, I'm like, that's a number 1 center in the NHL. Other nights I watch him and I'm like, that's a number 2 center in the NHL. And this franchise has certainly had its problems with maybe kind of grandfathering 2 second-line centers into first-line centers. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
But regardless, I mean, Yager is a top 6 center, I think. And he's just a really exciting player without being like ridiculously creative. Like there's other guys in the WHL, like Riley Height comes to mind, who are a bit flashier. Yager is, I think he's just all around really solid at the offensive end of the puck. And I mean, the dude scores goals and he makes plays. And frankly, that's kind of what you need from a top 6 center. So
yeah, I look at some of his stats. 28 goals, 50 assists. You think that's your playmaker. That's a playmaker center. There seems to be a lot of scouts that say he's not really your traditional facilitator of plays, like a Phil Tomasino type guy. He's more of a shooter, like more of a play finisher. How do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, watching the tape this year, he was certainly in a lot of good puck support positions to pounce on, some opportunities and put him in the back of the net. He's got a great shot. His wrist shot is, it's not quite Barlow's, but it's up there in this class. I think the concern for me about the scoring angle is there just aren't going to be as many opportunities in the NHL to be scoring on, like longer range, like sniping wrist shots. Right. And that's not to say that's all he relies on. He certainly gets around the net. He certainly has scored his fair share of deflections. But I think there's going to be an adaptability to his game. Like the guy can distribute the puck, right? It's that much is clear. He recorded 50 assists this year. And I think he is a player that's going to provide a really good foundation for a line, right? And ultimately what we see in the NHL is those players often kind of get shoehorned into that playmaking role. And so I don't want to detract from his shot whatsoever. But I personally think he'll find a little more success as a playmaker in the NHL.
So in talking about him, you're talking about somebody who is maybe a little bit more of a north-south player, good shot. We've seen his playmaking ability. Why is his ranking all over the map when you're kind of looking at different draft picks? And I know part of that is just the nature of this draft, but what are there some, kind of red flags about his game that have some people really dropping him a little bit lower? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say. I think everyone obviously has their preference. The one knock on him for me is that, like, defensively at times you like to see a little more from him. And I think, frankly, that's just like a bit of learning the role, particularly when the other team is, in their cycle and he's the center and he's supposed to be kind of manning that slot area, and he can kind of get a little out of there and float away and lose his assignment at times. You want to see him be a little more aggressive in that positioning. But I think the reason that some people see him a bit lower down than I do is because there are players, particularly coming out of the WHL, like Riley Heidt, like Andrew Crystal. Those two guys in particular are really, those are the guys who are going to stick handle around three opponents, who are, going to make those flashy plays, who are going to hit those highlight reel goals. Whereas Yager is, I think, a little more, I don't want to say toned down, but he's just a little more balanced across the board. And that's nothing against Crystal. That's nothing against Height. I think in my final ranking, they are all about roughly in like the same 5-player stretch. But with Yager, I think some people just want to see a little more from him on that. And I will also say, similar to what we talked about at the top, coming into this year, Brayden Yager was like thought about as kind of a slam dunk top 5 pick. And that's just not going to happen. And I think, similar to Chalet, similar to Dalibor Dvorsky, like it's just like the wear and tear of like being noticed so early that like there's just so much runway for you to like nitpick with these guys compared to, for instance, someone like Sanjin Palika, who really burst onto the scene this year, right? Or someone like even Gabe Perreault, who really like exploded onto the scene within the U.S. national team this year. So that's kind of one thing that always works against some of these guys, and I think there's no different.
Yeah. I watched this guy. I've watched some highlights on this guy, Brayden Yager, and this seems like a guy that Predators fans would love. Somebody that seems like he fits that Predators identity. Really good back checker. Pretty good, responsible, but just chases the puck all over the ice. Not afraid to just go anywhere where the puck is. Do you see this as kind of somebody that could wind up being sort of an energy guy if for some reason he doesn't fill out his potential as a 1C?
Absolutely. And frankly, a couple of weeks ago, Barry Trotz said they're looking for speed and they're looking for skill. I don't think Brayden Yager gets enough credit for how fast he is. And again, I think part of that is just playing the center role. It's a lot of stopping and starting compared to wingers who are kind of go. But yeah, I mean, there is a lot to like about his game that is projectable to the NHL level beyond the scoring and beyond the playmaking. And so at the very least, you feel comfortable with this guy being like a really solid middle or bottom 6, if not middle 6 option. Again, obviously that's not what you want, but the speed I think is certainly there. And that just adds to the other skills we already talked about.
Well, coming up in just a second, we're going to be talking about a guy who I think fits in exactly what the Nashville Predators want to do. This is a textbook David Poile guy. Will Barry Trotz feel the same way about him if he falls to the Nashville Predators at 15. We're going to talk about that in just 1 second. But first, want to mention today's episode is brought to you by a product I use literally every single day, and that's AG1 by Athletic Greens. You're probably like me. You want to be healthy. You want to eat well. You want to make sure you're pumping your body full of good nutrients, but let's face it, always easier said than done, right? It's expensive, it's messy, it's time consuming. Well, AG1 makes it easy. With just one delicious scoop of AG1 and a glass of water each day, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day off right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, aging, pretty much everything. And it can be hard and expensive to keep track of multiple different supplements and vitamins, not to mention how hard it can be on your stomach. So AG1 costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than buying all the vitamins yourself. And yeah, let's face it, probably your cold brew habit that you're going to Starbucks every morning. So instead, reclaim your health. Arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
So speaking about things that Nashville Predators like, let's talk about a big man. Let's talk about Matthew Wood, 6'3", 194 pounds. What is not to love about this guy? So talk to us a little bit about Matt Wood.
Yeah. Another look, this class is fascinating. We have been sitting on this class for years now, partially because Bedard established himself early as oh, I'm going to be number one. Right. And for a minute there, it was Michkov and, whatever, but we've had our eyes on this class for a few years. This is one of the deeper drafts we're going to have for a while. And similar to Yager, similar to Schaller, similar to Dvorsky, similar to all these guys, Matt Wood was at one point in time, people were convinced this was going to be a top 5 pick in this year's class. And I don't think that will happen. I think it's possible he sneaks into the top 10. A lot of people are talking about St. Louis and Matthew Wood. We'll see. I think the big reason behind that is the very obvious Tage Thompson comparisons.
Yeah.
UConn, baby.
Yeah, UConn forward, 6'3". He might even be taller than that by now. You just watch Matthew Wood and you could very easily see I don't know how many people watch Tage Thompson in college, but very similar players at UConn. So Wood was a freshman at UConn this year. We've had a few guys who've already played a year of college hockey. 34 points, 35 games on a program that is decent, although not amazing. And then added 13 points at the U18s for Canada in 7 games. This at my laziest take is that this is a slightly poor man's Patrick Laine. And there's a lot of nuance behind that, but that's kind of the headline here,
Well, that's a bad transition to the point I was going to bring up because I was going to talk about consistency. This is the guy that a lot of people say, they point out he never went 2 games without a point, dating all the way back to his days in the BCHL, where he set a lot of rookie scoring records. That's something that I think Predators fans got to salivate over, right? Just the thought of somebody who not only can score, but can score consistently.
Oh, that word.
Yeah, I mean, I think the nature of being a scoring forward in the NHL is you're always going to be a bit streaky, right? And it's certainly a lot easier to be consistent in college than it is at the NHL level. I think the reason I bring up Laine is because of that shooting talent. With his size, with his stature, he has got some really slick hands and a really good shot. I posted a clip on Twitter the other day where he just kind of marches down the ice and you are watching him and you're I'm not all that impressed with what I'm seeing. And then he hits the top of the circle and you don't see the puck when it releases from a stick and hits the net. And so that's kind of where that comes from. But you're right. I mean, he scores goals and he does have that wrist shot. He does have that snapshot, but he also gets in and around the net, and he digs for things too. And to have gone ahead and scored 11 goals as a freshman in college as a 17-year-old is impressive enough. And it doesn't feel like he's that far away from being, presumably next year, 20-goal scorer in college, maybe even more. And, getting that entry-level contract after a couple of years in school.
So you have a big guy, which Nashville Predators, they love their big guys. You have somebody with a great shot. What are any drawbacks that you see, or are there any red flags about his game that makes you think he may drop down and be available to the Preds?
Yeah. The skating's the big one. I think the size is what kind of keeps him up higher and potentially gone by the time the Preds pick. The skating is the big question mark here. Some people don't think it's as bad as others. It's undoubtedly his worst quality. I don't think his top speed is all that particularly bad. It's maybe NHL average, but like the real problem is the kind of reaction time, the accelerating gear, the ability to get into the mechanics of those long, complete stride extensions takes him just far too long. And again, I no longer see that as much of an issue as I did, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago in terms of being able to develop that once you're drafted to an NHL organization. But, this guy's never going to be a burner, right? He's never going to be one of the fastest guys on the ice. For me, it's just a matter of, his time, his like ability to read plays off puck and timing are strong. He just can't always get there in a foot race. And so being able to do that, being able to get there, being able to, drop your shoulder, get in front of the defender you're racing the puck for, and win that battle cleanly is really, I think, going to enhance his offensive ability.
It's kind of interesting you say that because, as we mentioned, BCHL, then he goes to UConn. You see a lot of people just play juniors or U.S. development team, stuff like that. Is it safe to say maybe we see that kind of skill, like that hockey sense, being able to lower your shoulder and kind of win physical battles? Do you see that maybe developing more as he plays more games against top talent?
Yeah, certainly, particularly in college and particularly in the Hockey East, where UConn is. It's probably the conference in college hockey closest to, what NHL hockey is like. And, as he continues to physically mature and grow and really get a handle on kind of what his body is telling him, he's going to continue to be challenged against that competition, but, he will also be able to challenge folks as well. And there is so much there to like about Matthew Wood. But it's really like, there's kind of that like glaring piece of the puzzle that like, if you can get that put in, like, oh man, watch out. Right. But that's a big if, and, we'll see how quickly and how able he is to adapt to that, particularly against even faster players in the NHL.
Eric, can I throw one wild card question at you real quick?
Sure, yeah.
So last year, Joakim Kemell, I think there's a lot of people that had him in the top 10. I think he was, wound up being like the 7th rated prospect on the board from The Athletic, something like that. Do you think there's maybe a guy in that 5 to 10 range that may fall to Nashville at 15? Whether it's somebody we talked about or somebody else that we haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah. And I went and checked my final ranking last year because I was curious, and I had Kemell at 10 in my last ranking. So, but to answer your question, 5 to 10, that's tough. The big question mark in the first round is Matvei Michkov. I don't think he's going to get to 15. I'm going to be clear about that. I'm almost certain he won't, but but that's kind of like the first big question mark. Once we get him out of the way, it really, there's so little separating so many of these guys that I can think of like 30 different ways this first round could go. And it really wouldn't surprise me. I think if you had to ask me for like one name that I think could slip, I mean, two guys come to mind, right? So the first is Oliver Moore, who plays for the U.S. national team. Undersized guy, but really fast, really slick with the puck, really skilled player. The second, and your mileage may vary on him, I don't think he is a 5 to 10 player, but people do. And so I think he could be available at 15, 20, whatever. And that's Gabe Perreault, who also plays for the U.S. national team development program. Gabe Perreault now holds the record for most points ever scored in a season at the U.S. national team development program. Beat Matthews, Hughes, Caulfield, all of them. And is also the son of former Predator Yannick Perreault, I should add. But has a lot of other question marks to his game, particularly his skating. He also played on a line with Will Smith and Ryan Leonard, who will both be top 10 picks. And a lot of the criticism, mine included, is that they did a lot of the work for him this year. And so that's kind of a guy who I think will be a bit of a litmus test on night one.
So we looked at 5 players here. Let's just say you're in charge of the Nashville Predators draft. All 5 of these are available at 15. Who do you pick and why?
Oh, that's tough. Man,
And you can say Colby Barlow because of the beard. Like, that's valid.
I really want to say Colby Barlow. The thing is like, they're picking that later. So I'm trying to square that circle in my head too. I think if all 5 of these guys are available, man, I might have to say Yager. I think he's just kind of the most complete. I think he's the closest to being NHL ready. And all of these guys can score goals. And you can find someone who provides a bit of a different angle, whether it's kind of a bigger goal scorer, someone like Daniil Boo, or a tenacious forechecking guy, someone like Gavin Brindley at 24, and or even another defenseman, Tim Wallander, comes to mind at 24. So I think I might have to go Yager.
Yeah. Eric Dunay, always a pleasure joining us. And don't go anywhere or don't go too far yet, because we're going to have to bring you back to talk about who the Preds will select with their second first round pick in this draft. So we will be happy to have you back. In the meantime, we know you got a lot of written work out, so let the people know where they can find all your draft stuff.
Yeah, you can check out my work at penaltyboxradio.com, and you can also find me on Twitter at onthefuturepbr. I'll be posting draft notebooks, highlights, all that jazz up until draft week, and then I'll be doing a post breaking down a few options for the Preds at all 13 picks that they have, as well as draft night and day coverage and some post-draft coverage as well. So,
Eric, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
All right, so plenty more draft coverage coming up in the weeks ahead, including some sleeper picks the Nashville Predators might want to try to get land late in the draft. Also, a couple of guys the Predators could pick in that second pick in that first round. We're going to be talking with Eric a lot more in the weeks ahead, so stay tuned. In the meantime, let us know who you think the Nashville Predators should draft with that 15th overall pick. Let us know in the comments or tweet us at LO_Predators. Ann and I love to hear from you guys. You can find Ann's work at InsideThePreds.com. Follow her on Twitter at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can meet my work and Eric's work at penaltyboxradio.com. Follow me on Twitter at _NSMorgan. That's going to do it for us on today's Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow with an all-new episode. We will see you then.